I should have known something was wrong when the rent was only $300 a month for a penthouse apartment in downtown Seattle. But I was broke, desperate, and had just lost my job at the tech company. When I saw the ad on Craigslist, I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my checkbook and ran. The building looked normal enough. A sleek glass tower that reached toward the cloudy Seattle sky. The elevator worked fine, the hallways were clean, and when I got to apartment 47B, the door opened with a normal key. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary until I actually read the lease agreement. "What the hell?" I muttered, squinting at the fine print under the flickering fluorescent light of my new kitchen. The document was thick, way thicker than any rental agreement I'd ever seen. Most of it was standard stuff. No pets, no smoking, first month's rent due on signing. But then I got to page 12. Tenant agrees to assume full ownership and responsibility for the 12 extraterrestrial female entities currently residing within the premises. Said entities are the property of the previous tenant and are hereby transferred to the new tenant upon signing of this agreement. I laughed. Had to be a joke, right? Some weird Seattle humor I didn't understand. I kept reading. Entities require daily sustenance in the form of earth-based nutrition. Failure to provide adequate care may result in complications. Previous tenant notes. They're actually pretty nice once you get to know them. Good luck, buddy. Very funny, I said to the empty apartment. 12 alien women, right? That's when I heard the shower running. I froze. The lease said the place was empty. I grabbed a kitchen knife. Not that I'd ever used one for anything scarier than opening packages. And crept toward the bathroom. The door was slightly open, steam drifting out into the hallway. "Hello," I called out, my voice cracking like a 13-year-old's. I'm the new tenant?" The water shut off immediately. I heard whispered voices. Definitely female, definitely not speaking English. Then the door opened fully, and I nearly dropped the knife. A woman stepped out, wrapped in one of my towels. How did she even know where I kept towels? She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin that had a slight blue tint in the bathroom light. Her hair was silver white and seemed to move on its own, like it was underwater. But the weirdest part was her eyes. They were completely black, no iris or pupil visible. "You must be Jax," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that made my teeth tingle. "I am Anya. We have been expecting you." I stood there with my mouth open, holding a butter knife like it would protect me from whatever this was. "The previous tenant, Marcus, told us a new human would be taking over our care," she continued. Walking past me like this was the most normal conversation in the world. "We are grateful." Marcus was adequate, but he never learned to cook properly. "I'm sorry, what now?" I managed to stammer. "Care? And who is we?" That's when the other 11 came out. They emerged from rooms I hadn't even explored yet. Bedrooms, closets, what looked like a pantry. Each one was different but clearly not human. Some had skin in shades of blue, green, or pale purple. Others looked almost normal except for details like pointed ears, eyes with vertical pupils, or hair that defied gravity. One of them was only about 4 feet tall with large, luminous amber eyes. Another was nearly 7 feet tall with what looked like scales along her arms. They all gathered in my living room, looking at me expectantly. "So," said a green-skinned woman with short, spiky hair, "can you cook better than Marcus?" Because his pancakes were terrible. I sat down heavily on my couch. "This is really happening, isn't it?" "I am Kira," said the green woman, apparently taking that as a yes. "I handle communications and translation. This is 7-inch. She pointed to the short one with amber eyes. "She manages our technology and keeps the building systems running." "That's Vesper." A purple-skinned woman with flowing black hair nodded. "She's our cultural specialist and helps us understand human customs." The introductions continued. There was Ares, who looked almost human except for silver markings across her skin that seemed to pulse with their own light. Erebus was the tall one with scales, and she apparently handled security, which explained why she kept eyeing my butter knife with what looked like amusement. Lyra had pointed ears and strange, shifting patterns in her irises that hurt to look at directly. Then there were 5 others whose names I immediately forgot in my panic, though I noticed one had what looked like gills along her neck, another had skin that seemed to absorb light, and one appeared to be partially translucent. Okay, I said, holding up my hands. Let's say I believe this is real. Let's say you're all actually aliens living in my apartment. Your apartment now, Anya corrected gently. And we are not aliens. We prefer extraterrestrial refugees. Right? Refugees. From where? Different places, Seven said, her voice much higher and more childlike than her appearance suggested. Some of us are from the Andromeda galaxy, others from dimensions that intersect with yours. We were brought here by your government as part of a cultural exchange program. The government knows about you? Oh yes, Vesper laughed, and the sound was like wind chimes. Where do you think your technology advances come from? Seven alone has contributed to at least 30 patents in the last 5 years. My head was spinning. So why are you living in apartments instead of, I don't know, labs or military bases? Because, Kira said patiently, the program is designed to help us integrate into human society. We live normal lives, contribute to your economy, and learn about your culture. In exchange, we share our knowledge. And Marcus was your, what? Guardian. Caretaker, Anya said. Each residential unit is assigned to a human who ensures we have proper housing, nutrition, and legal documentation. In return, that human receives extremely affordable housing and a small stipend from the government. How small? I asked because, hey, I was broke. $1,500 a month, Erebus said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was deep and had an odd echoing quality. Tax-free. I stared at them. You're telling me that I'm getting paid $1,500 a month to be your roommate? Essentially, yes, Anya said, though the arrangement does come with responsibilities. We require proper nutrition. Some of us have very specific dietary needs. We need help navigating human bureaucracy and social situations. And occasionally, we need protection from humans who might not understand our presence here. What kind of protection? Before anyone could answer, there was a loud bang from the apartment door. Then another. Someone was trying to break it down. All 12 women immediately went into action with a coordination that was definitely not human. Seven disappeared, literally vanished from sight. Erebus moved to the door with impossible speed. Kira started speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like music mixed with mathematics. The others took positions around the apartment, and I suddenly noticed that several of them were holding weapons that definitely hadn't been their moments before. Who is it? I whispered. Probably the men who have been watching the building for the past week, Anya said quietly. They are not government. They are collectors. Collectors. People who capture beings like us to sell on the black market, Vesper explained, her earlier cheerfulness completely gone. There is a significant underground market for extraterrestrial individuals. The banging stopped. Then I heard the sound of the lock being picked. Stay behind us, Erebus commanded, and I was happy to obey. Whatever was about to happen, I was clearly the least qualified person in the room to handle it. The door opened and 3 men in tactical gear burst in, carrying weapons that looked military-grade. They took one look at the assembled alien women and started shouting orders. Secure the specimens. Watch for runners. That's when things got really weird. Seven reappeared behind one of the men and touched his neck. He immediately collapsed, unconscious. Lyra looked directly at another man, and he stopped moving entirely, like a statue. The third man tried to fire his weapon, but it simply dissolved in his hands. I mean, literally dissolved, like it was made of sugar in the rain. The whole fight, if you could call it that, lasted maybe 10 seconds. Well, Kira said cheerfully, stepping over one of the unconscious men. That was exciting. I stared at the 3 men lying on my floor. Are they dead? Sleeping, Seven said. They will wake up in a few hours with no memory of being here. We will call the proper authorities to collect them. The proper authorities being? Agent Rodriguez from the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, Anya said. pulling out a cell phone that looked exactly like a normal iPhone. She handles these situations. While Anya made her call, the others began cleaning up like this happened every Tuesday. Erebus dragged the unconscious men into the hallway. Vesper was somehow repairing the damage to my door with a device that looked like a metallic pen. The others went back to whatever they'd been doing before the interruption. I sat back down on my couch hard. "This is my life now," I said to nobody in particular. "It is not so bad," Lyra said, settling down next to me. Up close, I could see that her skin had a subtle pattern of scales, but they were almost translucent and caught the light beautifully. Marcus seemed to enjoy it, once he adjusted. "What happened to Marcus?" "He got a promotion," Seven said, popping up from behind the kitchen counter where she'd apparently been making coffee. "The government offered him a position overseeing an entire building of extraterrestrial residents. He lives in Portland now and manages 47 beings from 12 different species. And he recommended me for this job?" "Not exactly," Kira said, looking slightly embarrassed. "We chose you." "You chose me? How? Why?" "We have been monitoring potential caretakers for several weeks," Anya explained, hanging up her phone. "Agent Rodriguez will be here in 20 minutes, by the way. We observed your behavior, your financial situation, your psychological profile. You've been stalking me?" "Researching," Vesper corrected. "We needed to ensure you would be compatible with our needs. You are employed in technology, so you understand complex systems. You have no family dependencies that would complicate the arrangement. You are tolerant of unusual situations. Your internet browsing history was very informative." I felt my face turn red. "You looked at my browsing history? How else would we know if you were prepared for a non-traditional living situation?" Seven asked innocently. "Do not worry. Your interests are quite normal by our standards." "I'm never opening my laptop again," I muttered. "We also observed your behavior in social situations," Kira continued. "You are kind to service workers. You help elderly humans with heavy packages. And you once spent 3 hours helping a lost child find their parents in a shopping mall." "You saw that." "We see everything, Jax," Erebus said, though not in a threatening way. "It is how we stay safe." Agent Rodriguez turned out to be a surprisingly normal-looking woman in her 40s, wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase that probably contained things I didn't want to know about. She arrived exactly 20 minutes after Anya's call, collected the 3 unconscious men without comment, and handed me a thick folder. "Your orientation materials," she said briskly. "Everything you need to know about the care and feeding of your new residents. There's also information about your monthly stipend, tax implications, and emergency procedures." Questions. I had about 1,000,000 questions, but my brain had reached capacity. "I guess. Is this legal?" "Completely. The Extraterrestrial Integration Act was passed in 2019, though it's classified at the highest levels. You'll need to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but other than that, you're just a regular landlord with very unusual tenants." She left me with the folder and a phone number for emergencies. After she was gone, I sat at my kitchen table and started reading. The first thing I learned was that my new residents had very specific dietary requirements. Anya needed foods high in copper. Apparently her species processed metals differently than humans. Seven required a diet that was exactly 60% plant matter and 40% protein, measured by weight. Vesper couldn't eat anything that had been exposed to direct sunlight during growth or preparation, and those were the simple ones. "Do not worry," Kira said, looking over my shoulder as I read. "We have prepared a shopping list and meal plans. We also cook for ourselves most of the time. We only need you to purchase the ingredients and occasionally help with preparation." The second thing I learned was that I was now responsible for maintaining their legal documentation. Each of them had social security numbers, work permits, and identification cards, but these needed to be renewed and updated regularly through a special government office that officially didn't exist. The third thing was that my monthly stipend came with performance bonuses. If my residents stayed healthy and happy, if they avoided conflicts with local authorities, and if they continued to contribute positively to their assigned research projects, I could earn up to $3,000 a month. "What kind of research projects?" I asked. I am working on improvements to your internet infrastructure, Seven said proudly. Your current system is very primitive, but with a few modifications, I can increase data transmission speeds by approximately 340%. I am studying human emotional responses to music, Lyra added. My species communicates primarily through sound frequencies, so I am developing new therapeutic applications for audio treatment. I am a cultural anthropologist, Vesper said. I am writing a comparative analysis of human and Zephyrian social structures for the Galactic Cultural Exchange Council. As they talked, I realized that these weren't just random aliens who had been dumped in my apartment. They were researchers, scientists, artists, and specialists who had come to Earth for specific purposes. They just happened to look like something out of a science fiction movie. So what do you actually need me for? I asked. You seem pretty self-sufficient. Humans trust other humans, Anya explained. When we need to interact with your government agencies, your banks, your employers, it helps to have a human advocate. We also need someone who understands your social customs to help us avoid misunderstandings. What kind of misunderstandings? Well, Kira said, looking embarrassed. Last month Erebus accidentally terrified a police officer during a routine traffic stop. I was only trying to be helpful, Erebus protested. He seemed concerned about my identification, so I demonstrated that I had no weapons by showing him my natural defensive capabilities, which are: she can generate an electromagnetic field that disables electronic devices within a 50-foot radius, Seven said helpfully. The police officer's radio, car, and body camera all stopped working simultaneously. Right? I said weakly. I can see how that might be problematic. Marcus helped us understand these situations and taught us how to interact with humans in ways that would not cause panic, Anya said. We hope you will do the same. Over the next few hours, I learned more about my new living situation. Each of the 12 women had her own room. The apartment was apparently much larger than it looked from the outside, with some kind of spatial expansion technology that Seven had installed. They had their own schedules, their own jobs, most of them worked remotely for various government contractors, and their own social lives. Wait, you have social lives? Of course, Vesper said. I am a member of 3 book clubs, a hiking group, and a knitting circle. Humans are fascinating, and your recreational activities are very entertaining. Lyra performs at open mic nights, Kira added. She is quite popular, though she has to be careful not to use her natural vocal abilities. Humans are not ready for music that can alter their brain chemistry. Ares teaches self-defense classes at the community center, another one said. I think her name was Nova, though I was still struggling to keep everyone straight. Her species has natural combat abilities that translate well to human martial arts. As the evening wore on, I began to understand that I hadn't just inherited 12 alien roommates. I had become part of a small, strange family that had formed around shared experiences and mutual protection. They looked out for each other, helped each other navigate human society, and had built their own little community within the larger city. So what do you think? Anya asked as I was getting ready for bed. Will you stay? I thought about it. I thought about my empty bank account, my job search, my tiny studio apartment with the broken air conditioning, and the neighbors who played music until 3 a.m. Then I thought about the $1,500 monthly stipend, the fascinating roommates, and the chance to be part of something completely unique. I'll stay, I said, but I have some conditions. Name them, Erebus said, and I could hear the approval in her voice. First, no more picking locks or breaking into my stuff to research me. If you want to know something, just ask. Agreed, Seven said immediately. Second, I need to understand everyone's abilities and needs so I don't accidentally cause problems. I want a full briefing on what each of you can do and what you require. That is reasonable, Anya nodded. Third, we're going to establish some house rules about things like bathroom schedules, kitchen use, and what to do when people try to break down our door. Excellent idea, Kira said. Marcus never established proper protocols. And finally, I said, I want to know the real story. Why are you here? What's the actual purpose of this program? And what aren't you telling me? The 12 women exchanged glances that contained entire conversations. That, Anya said slowly, is a longer story, and perhaps one best told over breakfast tomorrow. Fair enough, I said, but I'm going to hold you to that. As I lay in bed that night, listening to the strange sounds of my new household, Lyra humming something that made the windows vibrate softly, Seven typing on a keyboard that apparently operated at frequencies beyond human hearing, Vesper having a quiet conversation in a language that sounded like water running over stones. I realized that my life had just become infinitely more complicated and interesting. I was no longer just Jax, the unemployed tech worker. I was Jax, the caretaker of 12 extraterrestrial refugees, Jax, the keeper of government secrets, Jax, the bridge between human and alien cultures. It wasn't the life I had planned, but as I drifted off to sleep, I found myself smiling. Tomorrow I would learn their real story. Tomorrow I would begin to understand my role in something much larger than I had imagined. And tomorrow, I would have to figure out how to cook breakfast for beings whose dietary requirements included things like foods that have never been exposed to magnetic fields, and proteins that exist primarily in the fourth dimension. But for tonight, I was content to listen to the sounds of my strange new family and dream about adventures I couldn't yet imagine. After all, how many people could say they owned 12 alien women? Well, technically, I was their caretaker, not their owner. But the lease agreement was very clear about the transfer of responsibility. I made a mental note to read the fine print more carefully in the future. Though in this case, I was beginning to think that not reading it might have been the best decision I'd ever made. The last thing I heard before falling asleep was Anya's musical voice from the living room, speaking quietly to someone on the phone. Yes, Agent Rodriguez, he has agreed to stay. We believe this arrangement will be very successful. I smiled into my pillow. Yeah, I thought it might be successful too. I woke up to the smell of something that was definitely not bacon. It was sweet, metallic, and made my nose tingle in a way that wasn't entirely unpleasant. When I stumbled into the kitchen, I found Seven standing at the stove, carefully monitoring what looked like purple pancakes that were somehow floating an inch above the pan. "Good morning, Jax," she said without turning around. "I am preparing breakfast. These are nutrition cakes made from processed kelp and synthesized proteins. They contain all the nutrients your human body requires for optimal function." "They're floating," I said, rubbing my eyes. "Yes, the preparation process requires suspension in a controlled gravitational field. Otherwise, the molecular structure collapses and they taste like cardboard." I poured myself coffee from a pot that was definitely not the one I'd brought with me. This coffee maker looked like it belonged on a spaceship, all curves and glowing panels. But the coffee that came out tasted better than anything I'd ever made. "Seven upgraded your appliances," Kira said, appearing in the doorway. She was wearing what looked like normal jeans and a t-shirt, but the fabric seemed to shift colors slightly as she moved. She cannot help herself. She sees inefficient technology and must fix it. "Your coffee maker was wasting 73% of the available flavor compounds," Seven said defensively. It was painful to watch. As I sipped my impossibly good coffee, the others began filtering into the kitchen. In the morning light, they looked more human, or maybe I was just getting used to them. Anya had tied her flowing silver hair back in a ponytail, and if you didn't look too closely at her eyes, she could pass for a tall, pale woman with unusual fashion sense. "You promised me the real story?" I said as Seven served up the floating purple pancakes. They actually tasted amazing, like blueberries mixed with vanilla and something I couldn't identify. "Ah yes," Anya said, settling down at the table with her own breakfast, which appeared to be chunks of metal in some kind of sauce. "The truth about why we are here. The official story," Vesper began, "is that we are part of a cultural exchange program designed to promote peaceful relations between Earth and various extraterrestrial civilizations." "And the unofficial story?" I asked. The 12 women exchanged another one of those meaningful looks. "The unofficial story," Erebus said slowly, "is that your planet is in danger, and we are here to help you prepare for what is coming." I set down my fork. "What kind of danger?" "Not invasion," Lyra said quickly, seeing my expression. "Nothing like your movies. But your species is approaching several critical technological and social development points simultaneously. Without guidance, the probability of catastrophic failure is approximately 87%. Catastrophic failure of what? Everything, Seven said matter-of-factly. Your climate, your technology, your social structures, your economic systems. Humans are very good at creating solutions, but you are not very good at predicting the consequences of those solutions. Kira leaned forward. My species went through a similar development phase about 2,000 years ago. We nearly destroyed ourselves 3 times before we learned to think beyond immediate results. So you're here to, what? Save us from ourselves. Not save, Anya corrected. Guide. The Galactic Council has strict rules about interference in developing civilizations. We cannot solve your problems for you, but we can share knowledge, provide examples, and help you avoid the most dangerous mistakes. There's a Galactic Council? Oh yes, Vesper said cheerfully. 17 different species, representing about 43 inhabited worlds. Earth was admitted as an observer member in 2019, though your government has not yet informed your population. I stared at them. My government knows about a galactic council of alien species? How do you think your technology has advanced so rapidly in the last few decades? Seven asked. Humans are clever, but you did not develop quantum computing and fusion power entirely on your own. We've been slowly introducing improvements through human scientists and inventors, Lyra explained. A suggestion here, an insight there, always making it seem like natural human innovation. But that's just the technology side, Erebus said. The real challenge is social development. Your species is approaching the point where you will either learn to cooperate globally or destroy yourselves trying. Which is where the residential program comes in, Anya said. By living among humans, we learn how your culture actually works at the individual level. Not governments or corporations, but people. How they think, what they value, what motivates them. And in return, we serve as examples of how different species can coexist peacefully, Kira added. Most humans who interact with us regularly become more open to diversity, more curious about other cultures, more willing to consider perspectives beyond their own experience. I thought about this as I ate my impossible pancakes. So I'm not just a caretaker. I'm part of some kind of social experiment. We prefer to think of it as community building, Vesper said. But yes, essentially. What happens when the experiment is over? That depends on how successful it is, Anya said. If humans demonstrate that they can handle gradual integration with galactic civilization, the program expands. More species, more residential units, more cultural exchange. And if not, the silence stretched uncomfortably long. Let us focus on success, Erebus said finally. After breakfast, Anya gave me the tour I should have gotten the day before. The apartment was definitely bigger on the inside, not just the spatial expansion technology Seven had mentioned, but actual dimensional folding that created rooms that couldn't possibly fit in the building's footprint. Is this legal? I asked, standing in what appeared to be a greenhouse that was somehow receiving natural sunlight despite being on the 47th floor of a building. The building is owned by the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, Anya explained. It exists in 17 different dimensional phases simultaneously. From the outside, it appears to be a normal residential tower. From the inside, it can accommodate whatever its residents require. How many other buildings like this are there? In Seattle? 3. Globally? About 230. I stopped walking. There are 230 buildings full of aliens? Extraterrestrial residents, Kira corrected, appearing beside us. And not full. Most buildings house between 8 and 15 individuals. We are on the larger side. How many total? Approximately 4,000 beings from 63 different species currently residing on Earth, Seven said, materializing from what I could have sworn was an empty hallway. Though that number fluctuates as programs expand and residents rotate back to their home worlds. 4,000 aliens living among humans, and nobody knows about it? Plenty of humans know about it, Vesper said, joining our growing group. But most of them are bound by non-disclosure agreements like yours. Scientists, government officials, military personnel, select academics. There is an entire infrastructure supporting peaceful integration. What about the men who tried to break in yesterday? Black market collectors, Erebus said, her expression darkening. Not everyone supports the integration program. Some humans see us as valuable commodities to be captured and sold. Others see us as threats to be eliminated. Still others simply want to exploit our abilities for profit. There are underground markets where extraterrestrial individuals are bought and sold like property, Lyra said quietly. The collectors who attacked yesterday were likely working for someone who wanted to acquire us for research or entertainment purposes. I felt sick. That's horrible. It is why the residential program exists partly in secret, Anya explained. Public knowledge would create panic in some humans and make us targets for others. Better to integrate gradually, allowing people to adapt slowly to our presence. But what about people like me? Regular people who just stumble into this? You did not stumble, Seven said with what might have been amusement. We chose you very carefully. Your psychological profile, your life circumstances, your personal values, everything indicated you would be a suitable caretaker and cultural liaison. We have been watching potential candidates for months, Kira added. Not just you, but dozens of humans in similar situations. When Marcus received his promotion, we selected you from our list. Based on what? Many factors, Vesper said. Your response to unusual situations, your treatment of people different from yourself, your financial need that would make the arrangement appealing, your lack of close family ties that might complicate the secrecy requirements. Also, Lyra said with something that might have been a smile, you have excellent taste in science fiction. Someone who enjoys stories about peaceful alien contact is more likely to handle the reality positively. You really did look at my browsing history. Extensively, Seven confirmed. Your Netflix viewing patterns were particularly informative. The tour continued through rooms that defied physics and architecture. There was a library that seemed to contain books in languages that used symbols I couldn't even focus on properly. A workshop where several of the women were building devices that looked like art installations but apparently served important scientific purposes. A communications room filled with equipment that was definitely not made on Earth. We maintain regular contact with our home worlds and the Galactic Council, Anya explained when she saw me staring at the array of impossible technology. Progress reports, cultural observations, requests for guidance on difficult situations. Are you reporting on me? Of course, Kira said. But only positive observations so far. You have adapted to our presence much more quickly than most humans. Marcus required 3 weeks before he stopped jumping when one of us entered a room unexpectedly. What happens if I don't work out? Memory modification and relocation, Seven said matter-of-factly. You would wake up in a different city with memories of having moved there for a new job. Perfectly pleasant, but entirely fictional. Has that happened before? 17 times in the past 5 years, Erebus said. Some humans simply cannot adapt to our presence, no matter how carefully they are selected. Better for everyone if they return to normal lives with no memory of the experience. But we do not believe that will be necessary in your case, Anya said quickly. Your responses have been very positive. What constitutes a positive response? Curiosity rather than fear, Vesper explained. Questions instead of assumptions. Willingness to adapt rather than demands that we conform to your expectations. Also, Lyra added, you have not tried to touch us without permission, take pictures of us, or contact any media outlets. Those are all immediate disqualification behaviors. As we finished the tour, I began to understand the scope of what I had gotten myself into. These weren't just alien refugees hiding out in my apartment. They were advanced scouts for a galactic civilization, carefully studying humanity to determine whether we were ready for contact with the larger universe. And I was their primary human contact. No pressure, I muttered. Actually, quite a lot of pressure, Seven said seriously. The success or failure of this residential unit will influence policy decisions affecting your entire species. Seven, Anya said warningly. What? He should understand the importance of his role. She's right, I said. I should know. What exactly are you reporting about humanity based on living with me? Social adaptability, Kira said. How quickly humans can adjust to new paradigms. Emotional resilience under stress. Capacity for forming relationships across species lines. Problem-solving approaches when confronted with unfamiliar challenges. Basically, Vesper summarized, we are learning whether humans can handle the truth about the larger universe without panic, violence, or attempts to exploit the situation for personal gain. And how am I doing? Remarkably well, Anya said warmly, though it has only been 18 hours. The real test, Erebus said, will be how you handle the complications. What complications? That's when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when Seven glanced at her own device, which was definitely not a normal smartphone, her amber eyes went wide. Answer it, she said urgently. But be very careful what you say. I hit the accept button. Hello, is this Jax Morrison? The voice was male, professional, and carried an undertone that made my skin crawl. Who's asking? My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. I understand you've recently acquired some very interesting roommates. I represent a consortium of researchers who would be very interested in meeting them. All 12 women had gone completely still. Erebus was making hand signals that clearly meant, hang up now. But Seven was shaking her head and pointing at her device, which was displaying scrolling text too fast for me to read. I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong number, I said. Oh, I don't think so. We have been monitoring your building, Mr. Morrison. We know exactly what you're housing up there. And we're prepared to make you a very generous offer for access. Access to what? Don't play stupid, Mr. Morrison. The 12 extraterrestrial specimens in your care. We're offering $5 million for exclusive research rights. Think about it, you'd never have to work again. Seven was frantically typing on her device. Words appeared on a screen that only I could see. Keep him talking. Tracing call. $5 million is a lot of money, I said slowly. Indeed it is. All you have to do is step out for a few hours. Leave the door unlocked. We'll handle the rest, and you'll wake up tomorrow as a very wealthy man. And what happens to my roommates? They'll be well cared for, I assure you. Comfortable facilities, excellent nutrition, all the amenities they could need while contributing to important scientific research. The way he said contributing made my stomach turn. These people weren't talking about voluntary cooperation. They were talking about imprisonment and exploitation. That's a very interesting offer, I said, watching Seven's countdown timer. Can I have some time to think about it? Of course. But don't take too long, Mr. Morrison. We're not the only ones interested in your tenants. Others might not be as generous with their offers. What's that supposed to mean? Let's just say that not everyone who wants access to extraterrestrial specimens is interested in keeping them alive. The line went dead. Seven looked up from her device with an expression of satisfaction. Got them, she said. Location, identities, financial backers, and communication records for the past 6 months. Sending everything to Agent Rodriguez now. Who were they? Private military contractors working for a pharmaceutical company, Kira said, reading over Seven's shoulder. They have been attempting to acquire extraterrestrial subjects for genetic research. Genetic research? They want to understand how our biology works so they can replicate our abilities in humans, Vesper explained. Enhanced strength, telepathic communication, extended lifespans, immunity to diseases. There are billions of dollars in potential profits. But they can't just kidnap you. They can try, Erebus said grimly. And they do. 3 residential units have been attacked in the past year. In each case, the human caretakers were either killed or bribed to cooperate. What happened to the residents? 2 units were successfully evacuated, Anya said. The third was not so fortunate. I sat down heavily on the couch. This is really dangerous, isn't it? Yes, Lyra said simply. Which is why we need caretakers who will prioritize our safety over personal profit. Why we need humans who understand that we are people, not specimens. The phone call was a test, Seven added. We have been monitoring communications around the building. We knew Dr. Webb would contact you eventually. So you wanted to see what I would do. We needed to know if you could be trusted when offered significant financial incentive to betray us, Anya said. Many humans cannot resist such offers. And if I had said yes? Memory modification and relocation, Erebus said matter-of-factly. For your own safety as much as ours. People who cooperate with the black market rarely live long enough to enjoy their profits. I looked around at the 12 faces watching me with varying degrees of hope, concern, and calculation. These weren't just exotic roommates or interesting scientific subjects. They were refugees who had come to Earth seeking safety and cooperation, only to find themselves hunted by humans who saw them as products to be exploited. And I was their primary protection against that exploitation. So what happens now? I asked. Now, Anya said with something that might have been relief. We begin the real work of learning to live together. Today's test was about trust. Tomorrow's will be about cooperation. What kind of cooperation? Dr. Webb was correct about one thing, Seven said. Others are interested in acquiring us. Some are collectors like the men yesterday. Others are government agencies from countries that are not part of the integration program. Still others are religious groups who see us as either demons or angels. The next few weeks will likely bring additional challenges, Kira added. Our presence here is becoming known to people who should not know about it. We will need to work together to ensure everyone's safety. Including yours, Vesper said pointedly. As our caretaker, you are now a target as well. People who want to acquire us will see you as either an asset to be bribed or an obstacle to be removed. Great, I muttered. Anything else I should know? Actually, yes, Lyra said with what was definitely a smile now. Tomorrow is Erebus's birthday, by Earth calendar calculations. We are planning a celebration, and you are invited. How do you celebrate an alien birthday? Very carefully, Seven said solemnly. Erebus's species expresses joy through electromagnetic pulse generation. Last year, she accidentally knocked out power to 3 city blocks. We have learned to contain the effect, Erebus said, sounding slightly embarrassed. This year, we will only lose power to our building. Only our building? Do not worry, Anya said reassuringly. Seven has backup generators. I looked around at my 12 impossible roommates, with their strange abilities and dangerous secrets and their plans to celebrate birthdays by knocking out the electrical grid. I thought about the men who had tried to break down my door, the phone call offering me $5 million to betray them, and the fact that I was apparently now part of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. Then I thought about my old life. The studio apartment with broken air conditioning, the job search that was going nowhere, the bank account that was always empty, the days that blended together without purpose or excitement. You know what? I said. I think I'm going to like it here. Even with the electromagnetic pulse birthday celebrations? Seven asked. Especially with the electromagnetic pulse birthday celebrations, I confirmed. Excellent, Anya said, and her musical laugh made the windows chime softly. Welcome to the real story, Jax Morrison. We are very glad to have you. As night fell over Seattle, I sat on my interdimensional couch, drinking impossibly good coffee, and listening to my 12 extraterrestrial roommates plan for tomorrow's potentially explosive birthday party. Outside my windows, the city went about its normal business, completely unaware that 4,000 aliens were living among them, that a galactic council was watching humanity's development with interest, and that the future of the entire species might depend on how well a few thousand residential programs worked out. It was a lot of responsibility for an unemployed tech worker. But as I watched Lyra tune some kind of musical instrument that seemed to be made of crystallized sound, and Seven explained to Erebus why they couldn't just borrow power from the city's main grid for the party, and Anya coordinate with Agent Rodriguez about security measures for the celebration, I realized that I had found something I hadn't even known I was looking for. I had found a family. A very strange, very dangerous, very wonderful family that just happened to be from other worlds. and if keeping them safe meant standing between them and the people who would exploit or harm them, then that's what I would do. After all, the lease clearly stated that I was responsible for their well-being. And I always honored my contracts, even the ones I hadn't read carefully enough before signing.